Face front, true believers. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
10 years ago, Marvel's Daredevil stood above the rest and showed us the quality storytelling other shows were blind to. Now, with its official return, the burden falls to us to discern the truth by asking the question: will the new show measure up to the original? Join us as we start Discerning Daredevil Born Again. And that's right, we're talking the season finale, season 1, episode 9, Straight to Hell. Joining us on said finale is a familiar face that we haven't seen in a bit. So welcome back to the channel, esteemed writer, director extraordinaire, Mr. Jacob Gulliver.
Oh, thanks, guys. It's good to be back.
Nice to have you.
Always
back,
nice to come and have a chat with you about some good old comic book adaptation.
We thought you didn't like us anymore, Gulliver.
Oh, no. I've just been crazy busy, and it's hard to keep up with streaming these days. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out there.
Andor's just dropping like 3 episodes a week or something crazy like that. It's like, all right, really? Here we go.
Oh my god.
It's all
okay. So, Gulliver, I will throw it to you first. Obviously your thoughts on the episode, but of course, I'd like to hear about just what your feelings are on the overall season now that we have kind of like the big picture of what this season is.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pluses and there's a lot of minuses. It's kind of what it boils down to. I'd say overall, I feel like a solid B- is kind of where we're at, which is not a bad grade at all. But I don't think it's an A or an F at all. I think the strongest parts of the story are as they were before. Our primary cast, Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio really play off each other extremely well. There's some really, really good moments with them. I think they made a really hard choice in killing off Foggy so early. And I can't help feeling a little bit wounded by that, to the point where that maybe dropped my grade of the show a bit. I think the Heather character feels really poorly written to me overall. I think the actor did fine with the material that she had, but I think she largely existed to be somebody who gets in Matt's way, which is not a great way to approach a character. All chemistry that they had seemed to disappear after her first appearance, and I could not understand why they were continuing to be connected after that. So I really struggled with that plot line. Overall, like I said, I think there's some really strong moments. I absolutely loved the bank heist episode. I think that was probably my favorite of the series. But that's neither here nor there, I guess.
And then just quickly thoughts on the finale episode.
Sure, yeah. I think I'm glad that they brought Frank back in for it. I do think he kind of stole the show a little bit in this episode. And same with the kind of the same thing with bringing Karen back in again. She kind of took over. I think there's some really big moves happening. I don't think that this is like a super satisfying season end for either Matt or Fisk, because I feel like they're kind of teasing what's coming next, but they didn't really resolve the rest of this like sort of seeds they established. Mm-hmm. Like it feels like I'm one episode short of what a season finale should be. Does that resonate with you at all, or not really?
I kind of feel what you're saying. I was surprised at how much of a cliffhanger we left it out on. It definitely didn't feel like any sort of definitive conclusion to the story.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's fair. Dragon, what are your thoughts on the finale?
I mean, look, all considering, with the mitigating factors considered, as unfortunately that was like that was the anchor around that was kind of the anchor and kind of weight around the ankle of the season, where it was like, if take everything with a grain of salt because it's two visions kind of conflicting with each other. Both visions in a vacuum in themselves might have been good, but again, obviously the latter is I think is kind of what we've been hoping for. But it's a shame we can only cram in that, which feels like it would have really righted the ship. And as we see with this episode, and last episode, and the first episode, those three, they're really percolating. They're bringing kind of like the vibe of the old show, and they're kind of like doing this. I don't know. There's a lot of momentum. I think there's a lot of strong components that come from, and I really, again, I think it was firing on all cylinders. And that's not to say, again, even with kind of our old guard kind of stuff, like again, the bank heist episode does feel like what I wanted from the announcement of like Daredevil in the MCU. I want, you could attest that Daredevil's malleable enough. You could drop him in the MCU and have him integrate very well. And again, based on the logic being, we go full Mark Waid run with it, which essentially the original Netflix show, I argue, kind of represented, but mind you, it definitely leaned more Frank Miller at times, which clearly the first season has to, because that's very much the Romita Jr. Frank Miller run, Man Without Fear.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, again, the fact that it was, I always use the Mark Waid analogy because Mark Waid's run to me always felt like a combination of, it's a lot of Stan Lee era Daredevil and a little bit like dash of Frank Miller here and there, but mostly mostly Stan Lee. And then the Netflix show, I feel, kind of captured that balance very well, because all the Nelson Murdoch stuff, it's classic Stan Lee, and we love it.
Yeah.
So the point being, it was really great to kind of see that. So in theory, mixing the two does have its benefits, but ultimately, again, when one's going to outshine the other, and it's going to compromise, like we can't go back and completely reshoot everything, so we're stuck with certain plot points, like Foggy has to die. But if we're going to kill him off, we kill him off in a way that feels like the way you would want him to be killed off. So I'm with Gulliver in that there are pros and cons to this season.
Yeah.
I hate that ultimately it boils down to that, because again, it feels like overall we do have a solid show, but it's definitely flawed compared to the other perfection that we had with the original show. And I feel this was a strong finish, mainly because we knew from the get-go, because of all that, we were going to get, like, at the bare minimum, we were going to get 2 seeds, because it was 18 broken in half, essentially.
I think with like the previous season, correct me if I'm wrong, the previous like Netflix series episodes were longer. They were like 45 minutes or something.
Well, no, they were longer, and they were the shortest episodes they would have were 45 minutes, but they were like usually like 50 to an hour. That's the thing,
So I think that is a positive here.
The seasons were longer though.
Concise.
The seasons were 13 episodes.
Yeah. I think there is a positive here in being more concise with the editing, more compact storytelling. There's not as much stuff that could have been left on the cutting room floor. Especially as it went on, there were definitely episodes where I was like, okay, this scene is here because you didn't have enough to get to your 45 minutes to an hour, and there's not that with this. I think they're being more purposeful in the scenes that they are choosing. I don't see a lot of stuff that I thought could have been cut.
So I think our finale demonstrates, okay, our showrunners definitely have kind of a vision going on here. We dropped a lot of plot stuff that did remedy, at least had an attempt. I mean, again, still we are lacking things in certain episodes pacing wise in regards to, we draw a lot. The Red Hook's important. The end payoff for Red Hook being important, I really liked, but again, getting there was like, why is he so obsessed with Red Hook? It's just like, we keep it was so. There were things that we didn't know, and I know I hoped we were building this something, and we were, but still, just the path getting there did feel a little like, okay, we're spinning our wheels because we can't really get to the meat that we want to, based on the material that we have. And again, the BB, the biggest symbol I have for like the editing and just kind of the curse of the old vision it's the conflict of this show is the BB report just constantly in your face. So like until like one episode's like the same interviews over and over again, like, all right, I get it.
Yeah.
As I'm saying, when we get original showrunners doing an episode, then we address, okay, she's there for a reason. She's trying to get justice for her uncle, which is what her uncle Ben, which is what we want.
Yeah.
So it's a season with a cliffhanger, but again, the security that will indeed come back, I think, does cushion the blow a lot. The biggest, everyone has made fun of the fact of like, well, we need an army, and the army that we get, well, we couldn't afford to put them in the last episode yet, but they are coming. Anyway, so that is egg on the face.
Hey man, we got Cherry there.
I think in a perfect world we would have been able to throw a little bit, I don't know, budget or time or something. We would have been
For a
able
second,
to.
Dragon, I thought we were gonna fucking see Mike Coulter.
Me too. I thought. Just that's what I'm saying. That would have been like the big okay. That would have, I think, swayed a lot of people were upset about Foggy. I think that would have like perked a lot of people up at the very end. Okay, we've lost the Foggy, but we put everyone in that last scene. Like that was our portal scene equivalent right there. That gets
honestly, I still think that's probably where we're headed in season.
Well, yeah,
2.
I know. That's what I'm saying. We're hopefully the word on the street is that's where again we're doing Devil's Reign, we're doing all that. But again, getting there is just like, oh, we weren't able to get him for the last shot.
Yeah.
Or we want to build like actual proper individual reveals, or maybe open the season.
Yeah.
Now, regardless, it is.
Wouldn't it be cool if they basically were like, in order to take down Kingpin, we need a Kingpin of our own, and that's when you reintroduce Luke Cage.
Yeah. Would have been. Anyway, so we're building something big for season 2. It's very exciting.
Yeah. I've seen a few random interviews with Finn Jones saying how much he wants to come back and get another chance to do it.
What? I would not be opposed to
like,
hey, look,
another chance. I really wouldn't, dude.
I'm just saying, like, we're in the era now. We redeemed a lot of the past. I feel that if anyone deserves a shot, I mean, let's give again Finn Jones. We saw him Defenders.
I feel like the writing was the biggest problem with Iron Fist. It really wasn't him. Like, he wasn't like rock solid casting like the other 3 Marvel Netflix, headliners were. But I think
it wasn't his fault. He got CW writing. That's
right.
I mean, we got a bunch of CW writing, and we got glimpses and glimmers in Defenders that okay, put him in a room with Mike Coulter. That's going to bring the best out of him. So there is hope for him, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. What's the worst case? They go say, well, he died. Do we have a new Iron Fist now? That's
all right. Oh, God. Okay, so I don't want to linger too long on my thoughts. Basically, I have a very simple kind of thesis here. That I think as far as rankings go, Mutali, like, it's hard for me to put this above any of the Netflix seasons just because I think the Netflix seasons, just by and large, even season 2, even though season 2 is the messiest, like season 2, we still have a lot of awesome Punisher stuff in that season. And we have Elodie Young as Elektra, which might not be the most compelling stuff, but it sure led to a lot of memes on Dragon and I's part. So, we can't exactly hate that stuff. Scott Glenn, too. A lot of good Scott Glenn stuff. So,
Scotty.
So I'm saying, like, what I'm saying, though, is I think the last 2 episodes of Born Again specifically really got to the highs of the, like, they truly felt for me like the best of Marvel Netflix Daredevil. Like, and I'm saying, like, if we could get a full season of that quality next time, I think we're in really good hands.
That is the promise. We'll see if they can fulfill it. That is the promise.
Then that being said, I also very much agree with you that Dragon, that I think the bank episode is honestly probably my favorite episode. I think in a vacuum, I do think I agree with Gulliver that it might be I think if anything else, it'll probably be the episode that I'll be compelled to go back and rewatch the most out of the season.
Yeah.
Just because it's a great kind of like, one-off issue of a comic storyline. And I think it fulfills all the promise of Daredevil in the MCU and what that can look like.
Yeah.
So if we get a little bit of Daredevil in the MCU mixed with like the gritty awesomeness that was the last 2 episodes, I think we can be in good shape. I just think it was just obviously like growing pains getting here given the circumstances.
Yeah. I think in general the Daredevil shows, this one and the Netflix ones have hit some low points when they get a little bit too like edgy, like the lines start to be like, okay, or they kill somebody off, to prove a point and not to like move the story forward. And it's like, all right, guys, we get it. That those points, my suspension of disbelief drops a little bit. But having somebody who's just a normal fucking guy, like Mr. Khan, I'm forgetting his first name, but the character Mr. Khan, in that space feels so satisfying.
Yusuf.
Because Yusuf, thank you. Yeah. because it really brings that air of like normalcy and lightness against that, more gritty tone, and it grounds it a little bit, I think. So I think that's part of why that resonates so much. Just having, a little bit of humor in between the more intense beats adds so much, just gives it a life,
Totally. All right. So yeah, let's really quick get into some comments. We got Mutali and Executive Judge in the comments here. Let's see. Executive says the fact that I was so excited to see Karen with Matt again over Heather should tell you something. Yeah, we'll get into the Heather stuff. Jacob, as Dragon knows, I am very much on your side when it comes to the Heather thing. The thing that Jacob, the thing that really threw me off with Heather, and I'm wondering if you've kind of felt the same way, is and I keep going back to the scene, Dragon. I'm sorry, it's like the nexus point for my problems with the characters, like when they're suddenly like moved in together out of kind of seemingly out of nowhere.
You keep telling him they're not moved in. She just visits a lot.
Well, yeah, but Matt has that speech about like,
it feels better when you're here, or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, when the fuck did we get to that point in the relationship?
Yeah. I think when that happened in my head, I thought, Matt, she's not a waifu pillow. Come on.
Right. Oh man, I like where we leave her off, though. I will say that much. And knowing what I know about her comic character, I do think it's really interesting that she could become like a genuine antagonist to Daredevil, which I think is interesting.
Sure.
All right. Let's see. Mutali says this feels like season 1, part 1. Indeed, I think Gulliver and I can both agree there. I don't necessarily think that's like a bad thing per se, just because we always knew that if we didn't know that we were getting to season 2, then it would be terrible. But I'm all right with it. I like how smoothly they had Frank appear without feeling shoehorned in. Agreed. Frank was by far, I think, the highlight of the episode for me. Mutali says, as far as ranking it, I already kind of went through that. The hand is what holds back. Again, we get good Scott Glenn stuff. So I don't know. Okay,
the hand holds it back.
All right, so let's get into the plot. Dragon, what do we got?
Okay, here's the plot. So in the aftermath of Matt saving Mayor Fisk, Kingpin orchestrates a blackout to kill the injured Matt Murdock and go after vigilantes. Karen calls upon the Punisher to protect the injured Daredevil and get him to safety. Daredevil and Karen solve the mystery of Red Hook that ultimately got Foggy Nelson killed. Seeking revenge on the Punisher fanatics, Frank is captured. Kingpin weeds out all the doubters and vigilantes of New York, killing them or imprisoning them in Red Hook. While Daredevil and Karen Page, they've built a resistance at Josie's for season 2.
All right, let's jump into some arcs.
All right, let's start with Matt Murdock, because we tend to do so. It's not like it's his show. So we saved Fisk. We kind of confirm here, it seems, because like Frank's calling him out. It seems that we confirm, Matt saved Fisk out of just instinct, and at the start of the episode, there's a lot of introspection going on about him. We kind of voiced this at the end.
I was really hoping it was going to be like a kind of like a move of optics, like you can't bring down vigilantes now.
Well, again, he has to. It depends on how much he's really considering that Kingpin's going to add him. Take it the only way that really works, but
right.
Which I think season 2 that is going to be something he is going to have to consider. I just don't think in this moment he's there yet.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think with it, I just kind of feel like the cliffhanger was it was a really good cliffhanger to like actually get you hooked into watching the finale, but in the end, it kind of felt like a little bit of a nothing burger.
Yeah, well, it does feel like something they could refer back to it though. That like,
there's like one scene where he's hurt, and then after that, it's just he's fine. Okay,
he's playing hurt the whole episode. He's injured. That's why he can't. That's why he can't stop him at the end. Remember?
Sure.
I don't like the tone of that shirt, Gulliver.
I mean, but he's totally fine with like dealing with all the dirty cops that bust in.
Yeah, but literally,
that.
it's all the dirty. Okay, I admit. Here's my issue with it. Okay, we had a very limited number when we introduced these guys, and then we have like a whole entire like Dark Knight Rises army of them. That bothers me.
Right,
but
right.
Aside, I'm saying with that in mind, there's like a whole army of them in Red Hook, and he is
Yeah.
playing hurt, and there's no Punisher by his
Yeah.
side, so I think it's justifiable.
Turns out it's easy to produce dirty cops, gang.
Apparently. Anyway, so ultimately, so the point being, he is thinking about it. He's got a lot of introspection going on here in his darkest hour, which is literalized by the blackout.
I love the callbacks that we get with Matt through Karen. Dragon, I was geeking out. My heart just I was a Grinch whose heart grew 3 sizes when they brought up the avocados at Lost.
Tiki, do you have the thing?
The sound clip?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if we have avocados at Law.
I mean, did you get sent anything today?
Oh, I think I have it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Point being, we are both one day going to be fine, upstanding members of the legal profession. El Grande... How do you say lawyers in Spanish?
Lawyers? Avocados.
El Grande Avocados.
That's not Spanish. That's fruit.
That's fruit. Vegetable at best. Point being, we are both one day going to be fine, upstanding members of the legal profession. El Grande... How do you say lawyers in Spanish?
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
There was supposed to be a shorter one where you just have like El Grande avocados, one of the plates.
Avocados.
There you go.
Avocados. El Grande Avocados.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Dragon, the avocados at Law thing, that was one of my favorite one-ers, one of my favorite bits of Foggy and Matt connection, and it really warmed my heart to see that kind of paid off again.
Warm the cockles of your heart.
Mm-hmm. That plus I loved the callback to the blind, he doesn't live in darkness, he lives in a million blinding lights. I love that, like really, really good season 3 callback stuff.
Yeah. Season 1 in this case, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt's dealing with Frank this episode. So Frank, I think looking at it here, given everything he's gone through, is really reflecting on the use of Frank Castle this season. Frank's like the manifestation of the violent nature that he's been battling this season. Just like literally everything that he's just trying to kind of not give in to after that bullseye moment at the top of the season. Just Frank is like throwing his face like, yeah, do more of that. It's like, no,
It's
Frank.
kind of like the bad devil on the shoulder, Yeah.
Exactly.
Come on, Red.
Yeah, so again, and I love that he's just angrily confronting him with the question of why save Fisk. And again, like Matt's kind of like, again, he hasn't had the answer until the end with Karen, where he kind of like, we kind of get an answer to it. But that's the thing, he just did it out of instinct, and he doesn't quite know why until at the end, where he acknowledges that, it's just kind of like not, he doesn't want to give into that darkness anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Karen gives us that answer. Basically, the balance that he had was thinking that he had control over the darkness, like we saw like through the first 3 seasons, especially season 1. Where he would always say to people, say to criminals that he did this because he enjoyed it, and then this season kind of gets to the root of like maybe he is now.
Right.
And again, it's part of the grieving process. So he realizes he makes him effective as Daredevil, but it's. Like Daredevil is kind of, he's kind of fueled by that. He's kind of fueled by that violent nature and that darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Again, Foggy's death has led to an identity crisis of sorts, which basically is what the whole root of the season's been. He kind of gives voice to this with Karen. And again, also, I do like that because we do see him later on. We're going to get to him in a bit, but still a bit of a parallel to Bullseye having lost his North Star. In this regard, Foggy one could argue, Foggy has always been Daredevil's North Star, and that he is the walking representation of everything Matt's father, Jack Murdock, wanted for him. He wanted him to be like the fine, upstanding, just kind of like the lawyer, versus, a guy who's like going around beating criminals with his fist.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So he's in a tailspin. Let's see. Also, I think by the end here, just in terms of like how we end things with Daredevil, not actually like doing like the one man. Basically, like he has an opportunity to do a cut man sequence, and he chooses not to
Right, he does.
do the
Yeah.
hallway scene. Like go through like the big ship that is like the main base of Red Hook, do the ports. But ultimately he doesn't, because he realizes his big arc this whole season ultimately is that he's realizing that desperation leads to sloppiness, leads to sloppy moves, and he's like one
I
could say
think
he.
episode 8 for him was like peak sloppy Daredevil.
I'm sorry, what?
Episode 8 was like peak sloppy
Yeah.
Daredevil.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so
Yeah.
he's kind of trying to sort of like recover from that, because he made a lot of mistakes in episode 8.
Yeah. Hey, he's walking without his cane. Oh, I didn't notice.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So ultimately he's kind of, one could maybe argue he took that shot as a kind of penance. Thanks to Karen, he makes the smart move because of that shot that he took. That he took for Fisk. He's making the smart move to, okay, he's going to win the war versus win the battle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, it's kind of like the Born Again season 1 arc is like becoming a symbol and rallying New York like Fisk did. And again, a season where the best thing I can say about this season that we kept the parallel between Daredevil and Kingpin going, which is always my favorite thing throughout the show. And I love that ultimately what we're saying here is that Kingpin is basically, he's the big hero by the end of the season. He wins out this season, and it's kind of like it's Daredevil accepting that parallel is there, and he has to be the light to his darkness and not just measuring his darkness with his. Basically, it's not darkness versus darkness. It's he needs light versus the darkness.
Yeah, I mean, we'll break down Fisk a little later on, but I absolutely I think some of the parallels that we can draw to real world stuff with his storyline is pretty fucking chilling. So it is a kind of definitely a high stakes place to end him out on.
Also, I just want to throw this out there. I do love that. I love when Daredevil plays hurt. Like season 3, he played hurt throughout the whole season, so he's having like a moment of like, yeah, he needs the help, which sets up he's going to need a whole army. It's just he can't do this alone.
All right. Sorry, Dragon, I don't have the list in front of me, really.
Kingpin. We're talking about Kingpin next. Now, Gulliver, do you have anything you want to throw in about Matt? Or
No, I think you guys basically covered it in regards to Matt's storyline. I can definitely start off with Kingpin if you want, though.
Yeah, sure. What do you think about Fisk's progression this episode?
I think overall his progression, like, I think there was sort of a turning point a few episodes in, or he seems like he's trying to sort of go good a little bit, and then like he kind of gives up on that partway through and just like goes harder and harder back as it was before. I kind of wish there was a little bit more like arc there, and not just like people make him mad and then he hurts them or blackmails them.
Mm-hmm.
He's got some good lines. He's got some good moments, as he usually does. And, the characterization is a big part of that. But I think the arc kind of fell off partway through for me. I wish there was a more like hard conclusion, or like he either suffers a consequence or he finds like a resolution to something that he didn't have before at the end. I think would have been maybe a little more satisfying.
For me, I honestly think the most satisfying part of the Kingpin arc isn't even necessarily anything to do with Fisk or Vanessa. I honestly think one of the most compelling characters, and I think the absolute, like the one character who was not in the Netflix show but still makes a genuine, like really big impression for me, is Michael Gandolfini's character.
Yeah.
And I really, really liked his kind of his arc going through the ranks, and I think Kingpin now having someone like that, just kind of like this loyal foot soldier, almost like the Darth Vader to Kingpin's, Palpatine. Like, I think that is something that he can like build on going forward in season 2. Like, I think just that blind loyalty is going to be very valuable.
Yeah, he's very much grooming him into being a hardcore gangster. in his organization, but not like a shoot 'em up gangster, more of a put the squeeze on him gangster.
One could see. Do you think he's trying to build a Wesley? You think?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the space.
So, I mean, to Gulliver's point, I from the beginning, the thing I was looking for in the season, they didn't lean into it, they didn't explicitly get to it like I hoped. And again, I do kind of blame the former direction versus we only did what we could work with in roughly three-ish episodes. I did really want Kingpin's kind of purpose here to be, he was trying to go back to his goal in season 1, which was to help New York in using violent means to genuinely help the city, and that's somewhat here, but we don't see the personal connective. He is coming at this from an earnest place of trying to help, and by the end here, we do question was this the plan the whole time that he was,
right,
or did he genuinely want to make like a less violent approach at it, which ultimately he just couldn't. He couldn't.
Dragon, I think a good indicator for that is the we built this city moments, where he just could not be less interested in like appearing to the public. Like, I really don't think he gives a crap at this point. I think he's purely in it for the power. That's how I've read him the whole season.
And that's the thing. So ultimately, my takeaway with this episode is that with what we are presented with this episode, it feels like whether having been the plan the whole time in terms of like the construction of the show, or like, okay, we're working with what we had, and then we're just kind of making it a little better, or at least work for the grand plan that we're trying to do with Kingpin as mayor. It does feel like he kept it really close to the vest, which I felt may have been a little bit to the detriment of the show at the start. Because again, we did spin our wheels a lot, wondering, why. Like Vanessa's big problem with him is that she doesn't know why he's doing this, and neither do we, the audience.
Right.
We now know why he's doing this. Red Hook is the key, and Red Hook is the reason why. And this all actually does make sense.
I will say that with Fisk, I definitely think everything involving like the corporate espionage side of thing, not just Red Hook, but like the thing with the diamonds and stuff, and like I just like all of that was just too overly convoluted for its own good.
And again, that's the spinning our wheels stuff from the original,
right.
plotting. It feels like. So the idea that basically, I'll get into the specifics later. And essentially, he wants to do Shadowland, which is from the comics. Is essentially what he wants to do. The whole basically Red Hook being kind of a sovereign, kind of a loophole within basically a perfect place that can do anything he wants and essentially have diplomatic immunity. Essentially, it's kind of dumbing it down there, but the point
is
being,
Red Hook essentially the idea is like judge, just like the bad guy from Lethal Weapon 2. He's got diplomatic immunity.
I think they were trying to avoid putting it like that, Tiki. But long story short, it's Malatia, it's Peoria, it's whatever you want to, It's essentially,
it's Malasia.
Yes. So, but that's the thing. So ultimately, it feels like with that payoff, it does feel like his end goal from the beginning was like, okay, whatever is going to get him to this point, that's why he needs to be mayor. So basically, he and Vanessa can make this work.
Right.
But so cleverly, now we're doing Kingpin moves in these last 2 episodes that do feel like the whole time the things we wanted to happen, especially with the whole Hector Ayala situation, is that he's using events to his advantage. He's spinning them to serve his overall goals, which are basically Red Hook and the vigilante problem, which is he cleverly uses the assassination attempt to advance his plan to catch all the vigilantes and even kill Matt Murdock.
I don't want to get into politics, but like
I know we'll get
honestly came like a little too close to home for like, wow, that's a really fucking 1-for-1 parallel right there.
But again, we did in a smart way. We didn't just we didn't shoot him anywhere specific,
Well, no, and again, I've been praising the Fisk stuff. I think some of the strongest stuff about the Fisk stuff is how it does show like a clear mirror to the current political situation without leaning into like the stereotypical like orange man bad sort of low hanging fruit that thing that can sometimes get into.
So again, it's just these are like clever Kingpin moves, and the whole draw of him being mayor is that he can get away with like the basically bring his business tactics into civil office.
Yeah.
So he's turned New York into a prison ruled over by that he can rule over, thanks to closing the bridges and the lights, and thanks to like Bullseye trying to kill him.
I mean, it's basically Dark Knight Rises territory by the end.
Essentially, yes, and yeah, it's kind of also like that movie 21 Bridges, where like for the night we're like closing off all the bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, yeah. So Red Hook is Red Hook essentially is his empire in the making, that his mayorship, basically was the long con for it. Basically, I guess the way of putting it is that he wants to be Doctor Doom via Vanessa's help. That's essentially what he wants. Through Vanessa, she could run Red Hook and do whatever she wants, or even technically he could. I mean, which ultimately it might be a point where he just kind of says, "I don't give a crap. I have Red Hook now, so no one can tell me what to do." But if he's mayor and has Red Hook, he's completely unstoppable, which I think is kind of where his head's at right now.
Sure.
So he's on a path. Basically, this episode was him on the path of getting everything he's ever wanted. Even again, I've said this like I think last episode or an episode before. Basically,
Vanessa, do you know what happened to the boy who got everything he ever wanted?
he lived happily ever after. But yeah, it's kind of the successful version of his season 3 goal, which was again the promise of season 2, where he wants to stand above the city with the woman that he loves, looking down the city that birthed him, and just have basically just be all powerful, and just kind of that's his ultimate revenge for the city rejecting him, that he owns the city with Vanessa. So again, I think looking at the scenes, it's self-acceptance. It's the theme of those parallels, where again it's like accepting the violent natures, and accepting it without like Matt kind of grappling with it. Fisk is just kind of accepting it. It has served his needs completely.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Vitaly saying, I wonder what's crazier, Thunderbolt Ross becoming president or Fisk as mayor?
Well, I don't okay, it's probably crazy that Fisk became mayor. By the same token, I still love what the showrunner said about like Fisk becoming mayor. Whereas this thing of like, well, I mean, it's like based on the viewing audience, there's a charisma and we're fascinated watching Wilson Fisk, and that is the terrifying thing of like, even if a figure is very clearly, again, this guy is, he's killed cops and FBI agents, and this is like public record that he's done this, and yet he's giving very direct answers to political questions because he doesn't care. There's something that draws you in about that, for good or for bad, and that's how that guy gets elected, and that's it's true. So I mean, I can believe it. I don't condone it, but I can believe it.
Yeah.
All right. Both Fisk and Matt embrace who they are in the end. Also, Fisk and Vanessa become the ultimate villain power couple, which, as you know, Dragon, that's one of the reasons, like, that's the therapy stuff with Fisk and Vanessa is like the one compelling plot point I did have with Heather as a character. And like I said, I think going into season 2 with her fully on Fisk's side, I think it's going to lead to her actually having like a relevance in the show. But I do think that for a long stretch of the season, we did not have that kind of like the Fisk power couple, and we are back. And I just want to just highlight, I love how we end on, Fisk and Vanessa toasting in front of the bloodied rabbit in the snowstorm. I love that. It's one of the last images that we have of them in the season.
And while she's wearing red on the side with the blood. Elektra would approve of that.
All right. Vitaly, I hope they don't make Blake Fisk's
that has been like an online theory. Everyone's been saying like could.
I just don't think we need it.
It wouldn't make sense because he wouldn't be unfaithful to Vanessa. That's why I don't buy
it. Exactly. Yeah. If anything, I think Fisk could be Blake's non-biological father figure.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, we're good to go. Who's next, Dragon?
Let's talk about the man with the skull on his chest, Frank Castle.
Let's be frank.
Let's be frank.
All right. Yeah, I don't know. I adore Matt and Frank's dynamic. I agree with Vitaly that Matt and Frank going back and forth, bickering like siblings about how to go about the vigilante stuff is just priceless.
Like an old married couple.
Exactly.
Like,
I blend
where's
them
the
up
coffee?
Right. You don't even have coffee, Red.
He loves coffee. See that? Why couldn't there be a Starbucks sponsorship?
Oh my god.
Punisher for for all this merchandising that they're doing.
My blend you moment of awesome, which we're going to kind of tiptoe around, has to do specifically with Matt and Frank bickering. I know I really, really love the Frank stuff. Gulliver's blind you moment is also a very pivotal Frank scene. But I think it really is interesting how, in this season, Frank has been like kind of like very much on the down low, only to put himself right in the line of fire. And then look where he's at. He's in the Adam position at the end of the season, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes me really curious. Dragon, I have a feeling I would like to think that Punisher one-off we're going to get is him escaping that situation.
Tiki, did you happen to see the post-credit scene?
Oh my god, I forgot.
Gulliver, did you happen to see the post?
I did. Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, the instant that he started talking in that post-credit scene, I was like, "This man's about to die."
Well, Tiki, look,
I don't know how it's going to happen yet, but
okay,
the
Tiki,
man he's talking to is about to die.
Okay, Tiki.
I was right.
Long story short, basically, you're not far off. We didn't see him like full on like open the cage, but I mean, it's very like he shakes, he charms the guy into shaking his hand. He basically breaks the hand and is pretty much like pulling that guy into that cell,
yeah.
like through the little window. So it's I think you're on the money. I really do think the one shot is going to pick up where like he's escaped.
It's essentially going to be like an assault on Precinct 13 situation, which that with Barenthal Punisher, oh my god, just sign me up.
It feels like that. It feels. I feel the smart way they're going to play that is it's going to be him like dealing with all the copycats and how he like more.
Oh yeah, I'm stoked. I mean, and I love that element of his character. I love that we're addressing such a real world thing. How the Punisher as a character has essentially been bastardized by the police departments, and Frank Castle's like kind of taking. Oh, it's so sweet. It's so
again, we'll put a pin in that for now, but yeah. So Frank, he's very reluctant to. Honestly, my takeaway with Frank this episode is that it feels like Frank is very reluctant to accept that he's slowly but surely kind of been over his own show and his Daredevil and this show. He's reluctantly rebuilding family and friends via Matt and Karen.
Right.
Especially Karen. Karen's always been there for him. Like seriously, she's in both seasons of the show. She's there. She's there always for him.
Probably leaning more towards him than Matt when it comes to a potential ship.
Well, yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Anyway, so the friends are, these are friends that were they're very connected to his transition into the Punisher, just like the origin season of season 2 for him, And on some level, like if Daredevil like killed, he might really accept friendship more for all we know. It's like, because he respects it. I love that dynamic that he respects Daredevil. Even if he fundamentally disagrees with him, he respects that. He's just baffled by why he always does the hard way, by his need to do things the hard way and the sanctimony that's attached with it. That's where they bicker, that's where the push and pull comes from, the Daffy Bugs of it all. It's like Daffy Bugs with violence.
It's the difference between a soldier and a monk in their way of thinking, right? Like,
exactly.
Frank is a soldier and has always been trained in the fastest way to the end is through. Whereas, a monk is not thinking about the fastest way, but rather the most effective way to tend the space and whether or not violence is appropriate.
Yep. And they also have a common enemy in Fisk, and the fact that Daredevil saved Fisk is just anathema to him. Like, what? Are you insane? And he's always had a soft spot for Karen. And again, there's the question of, will the friendship escalate? Because I love the detail that Daredevil points out that, you shaved and you put on aftershave. Was that for me? And you hear the heartbeats, and it's like he's right that Frank, he's he might have some feelings for Karen Page, and Karen Page has like a reverse Archie situation going on here now.
She does, yeah.
I guess okay, here's the real question: is Frank the Betty or the Veronica?
I think Frank's got to be the Veronica.
Right?
Out here asking the real questions.
I mean, forget the whole. Is he gonna?
Well, I'm just saying, like out of the two, like Veronica's definitely the more cynical of the two.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's the thing.
Like Matt, between the two of them, definitely has the sunnier disposition.
See, the thing that frustrates me is that I think I'm more attracted to Veronica, but Betty, on the other hand, though, again, if Betty is Daredevil, though, I'm leaning towards that, so I'm very split on this issue.
All right. I mean, these are the important issues of our day.
Well, yeah, forget if he's going to get the D's.
Oh God.
Anyway, so that's the thing. So on some level, here's where I'm thinking this might be something like the Flag, just kind of where we're going with things here. Potentially with the whole one shot with the Punisher, I guess. So on some level, I'd like to think his goal this episode, taking out the task force, is him taking an issue I had this season was that he had no responsibility or guilt or anything about White Tiger. He didn't address it, didn't even say his name, like say Foggy's name. That's a great scene, but maybe say Hector Ayala, Frank, you could, your symbol kind of got him killed. Just saying. But that thing, so it's a symbol that he's inadvertently created, and this is like getting to like the fundamental difference that he has with Daredevil, where he does not. He doesn't see himself as a hero, and the fact that like these corrupt cops are seeing him as a hero really unsettles him. And it's basically him. Again, he throws himself into this, and he's ends up with him captured, at least for a bit. He's throwing it all away for this vendetta. There is guilt there, even if he doesn't vocalize that he's responsible for these clowns.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So, Karen.
Yeah, I like that Karen kind of just represents that kind of like real life friendship that like, friends could be literal states away, but like if you have the tight enough bond, they're always going to be there for you. They're always going to be ride or die for you if you need them.
How great is it that Karen gets how great is it that Karen gets like the awesome epic reintroduction above any other character in this season? It was like the big reveal. It's Karen.
Yeah. I would have loved to see a little more of her during the rest of the show, but I'm guessing that was part of the challenge with the reshooting stuff.
It was originally Karen didn't exist.
And you cannot emphasize enough how much, as soon as Karen comes on, like all the other side characters outside of Michael Gandolfini, like they just pale. So even Cherry, I'm sorry, Cherry, like you're cool, but you don't have that much layers to you. Like Karen is a character that just really pops on screen. You know
what Cherry's middle name would be?
Oh God, what?
Maraschino.
Sure. Oh man.
Anyway. So
yeah, like I said, I just think that reintroducing her, it really just goes to show. I mean, by and large, I think, again, outside of Michael Gandolfini, I think BB Urich has some potential. I think, like I said, like Heather has some potential as far as like, now that he's working with Fisk.
BB's manipulation in the club scene, I think, was really strong, but I don't think the rest of her like moments were as strong as that was.
She's got to interview different people. Her journalism's really faulty in that regard. It's like, BB, talk to somebody else. Source. Yeah. It's like the same 5 people every time, BB. Come on.
So, yeah, but like I'm saying, I definitely think that Karen coming in kind of illustrates how, even though these new characters, some might have some potential, it's just like it's never going to be a proper substitute.
Yeah, I loved in this episode, she comes back not just like, hey, we miss Karen. It's like, she actually does serve a lot of plot here. She does basically she has the conversation with Matt that she was kind of grieving too much to have.
I love how she's basically the person who has to play like peacemaker between Matt and Frank.
And no, that's not her putting on like a reflective toilet bowl helmet, but that's a different peacemaker.
But what if it was Dragon? But what if
that'd be awesome seeing Deborah Ann Wool cosplay as Peacemaker. That would be adorable.
Oh my god!
And like Frank would just be rolling his eyes, like, "Oh, Karen." Just think of all the gun-toting vigilantes that cosplay.
Oh god.
Anyway, so if Karen were Frank's sidekick, she'd be Time Out.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I love that she's kind of the her role coming back. She channels Foggy's spirit in saving Matt's life here. That feels very appropriate. Where she reunites using her PI skills to avenge Foggy in the way that Foggy would actually want. Like it's doing like hard work and research and stuff that the Nelson and Murdoch bunch would always do. And she has the conversation she should have had way back. It's really nice seeing her kind of save his life in talking him out of the sacrificial assault on Red Hook, and that she brings light to the darkness that he's been dealing with the whole season. And you know what? Even though, again, we are kind of doing the reverse Archie situation with her, Frank, and Matt right now, we even call it out, too, like the whole Matt can hear how fast the hearts are beating around each other, and that's her saying, "Oh, I think you and Frank have a crush on each other." It's like, well, did you hear how my heart was beating around you? It says, yeah, it's just adrenaline. So it's like there's something there, and it does. I love that even though we're not there yet, or still you're kind of playing a little fast and loose, kind of like we did in season 3. I love that, we had that forehead kiss, man. I love that it's not a romantic thing. It's just kind of a nice thing. It's like her's the angel of mercy. It's just something that kind of works. And the full, with Karen, I know obviously this is not the last season, but it's something. There's something very full circle in that Karen, her whole life is defined by being saved by a vigilante, and be both in costume and out of costume with that vigilante technically, but her whole character in this show is being saved by a vigilante and how that changed her life, and she's really kind of paying it forward here at the end of this episode with her like convincing the vigilante, getting everyone to rally behind the vigilante, the one that saved her all those years.
I definitely think that's a cool kind of full circle moment for her, for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's play some darts. Let's talk Bullseye.
All right, I don't have much on him, Dragon. I'm kind of like, I was actually kind of surprised you were
kind of in the same space. Like there's an interaction a couple episodes ago at the prison where he's being interrogated, but that was kind of like the end of his arc. He shows up for a few minutes.
Dragon, why do you want to talk about him this episode? I don't really.
Well, like I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk about him for 2 reasons. Okay, I know we only have one scene with him, and I was debating whether or not to include him, but I didn't really. I could have put him in Braille Trail, but I don't know. I felt there was a lot of character they put into like the one big scene we had with him here, where we learned that in what led to the death of Foggy Nelson. Basically after his recovery at the end of season 3, he's been drugged up in a mental hospital, and it's this really great notion of how the heck does he end up working for Kingpin again? And because again, he obviously would want to kill Kingpin the first chance he gets, which ultimately he does. But Vanessa manipulating him in such a cruel way, and I just love the fact she's manipulating him, and we have Kingpin being MIA due to all the Echo shenanigans and Hawkeye, so on and so forth. It's good maneuvering on from a plot standpoint of how the heck do we make this happen. She secures the release, kind of the false promise of making him whole again. I just like that. What we get from Bullseye is that Bullseye is directionless, without a target and without a purpose, and this is basically this. I'm reading into this a little, I admit. Just the whole blue filter thing, the whole I'm always obsessed with the color theory in this show. So we have the blue filter, and it's very much like him refining and it's like a numbed version of the black, of like the red, white, and kind of the red, white, and black symbolism. So it's kind of he's very much kind of numb in that. The closest thing he's ever going to have to a North Star again is having a target and like a temporary purpose. So we confirm that he is definitely crazy. He's in a mental hospital. He's a living weapon, and he's basically Daredevil's worst fear of what he sees himself becoming. Like the escalation from Frank Castle would be completely Bullseye. In terms of this guy, he's got a gift, he's got a talent, but again, without anything. Again, if I kill Bullseye, if I become like the thing I'm trying to fight, it would be Bullseye.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love that the reason I bring him up is that we have this twinge of sympathy on a guy who, if we look in the course of this character in Daredevil season 3 to now, this is a guy who at one point he was a good person. He was an innocent kid who just wanted the love of his parents. Ends up being an orphan. He's hoping that they're going to come back for him.
I remember when he first came on in season 3, like I was very impressed because like he felt like kind of like just a generic kind of like milquetoast, like mopey white guy. And they ended up really doing something compelling with him. Like I feel like he came on basically as a blank slate, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, is that Fisk kind of like took advantage of him, molded him. And then now that Fisk has molded him into what he really has become, he doesn't really, he can't function without that direction.
Yeah, like Fisk turned him into a monster. And I love that's kind of what we have here in this opening. And Vanessa is kind of putting him back on that path, and then wreaks all the havoc. It's the fact
I honestly think that scene with Vanessa in the prison is maybe one of the most like Lady Macbeth-esque scenes that Vanessa has gotten so far.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. But yeah, he's just had that violence in him, and he's tried. Think of it, in season 3, he continually tried suppressing it, and he tried doing good with. He turned his prowess into, I can be the most effective FBI agent I can be, and then Fisk turns him into that monster, and then Vanessa just on a loop. Like, I need to close this loop here. And vice versa, the Kingpin then tries to kill him in prison. That just completely sets him off the train. And even in freeing himself and trying to kill the Kingpin, he is now still a puppet and a tool of the Kingpin yet again. So it's kind of, there's like an element of tragedy, despite Bullseye being like the most like this irredeemable monster for having killed Foggy Nelson. I just love that we were able to get that like a little bit in there with him, which brings up a lot of like hope and potential for him in season 2.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, and it's time once again for the last time this season to go to the blinding moment of awesome.
I'm blind, Matt Murdock. I'm blind, Matt Murdock. I'm blind, Matt Murdock.
All right, that's enough of that. Okay. So yeah, I guess I'll go first because mine's chronologically first.
In case people didn't realize that Matt Murdock is blind.
Right.
In case that clip didn't spell it out for you, kids. That is a man without sight. He sees a world on fire. That is a sightless man. He's using the cane not just to be fancy. He needs that cane.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Okay, so my blinding moment comes when right after the big siege on Matt Murdock, when Frank Castle comes in for the save, and we have that moment where Frank realizes that they have Hector Ayala's killer right where they want him. They put the bullet together, and they have that debate. They have that like war of words, that battle of philosophies over whether or not we should kill him. And I love how intense it is, but again, it's also very childish. It's also very much like either old married couple or like 10-year-old brothers, like one or the other. It's just like, it's that back and forth, and then Frank just like randomly just like wasting another goon just to prove the point that he doesn't care. I don't know. It's just a really good kind of like micro encapsulation of everything that we love about the Frank Castle and Matt Murdock dynamic. And I was really giddy for it. And then of course, what to make it better? We got a grenade, and I love how quickly it goes from just like the intense bickering to like, oh shit, grenade, we gotta go.
I love that. That was my runner-up for blinding moment again. If you didn't pick that moment, Tiki, I would have been tempted. I love
right.
just.
Well, I
just
think
love
yours
the
is pretty
mid-run.
damn good too, Dragon. I think all three of our blinding moments are pretty memorable. So.
But I love when Daredevil saves people's in like instantly, like Frank knows he's gonna catch him.
Right. All right, and then I mean, if you want to extend it to then Karen Page coming in and having like the most epic reintroduction of the season, you can. Just all around a very triumphant couple of minutes within the episode.
Mhm.
All right, Gulliver.
Yeah, mine is also a Frank moment. Like I said, I think he kind of steals the show a little bit in this
I
episode.
think Frank definitely steals this episode.
This is his audition for that Marvel one shot.
Yeah. But the moment where he kind of walks in and he starts fighting the dirty cops with their Punisher logos, and they tie him up and they tell him how much they idolize him and how great they think he is. And he tells them that they're a bunch of clowns that he wouldn't piss on if they were on fire. So satisfying. Truthfully, I was worried that Disney would like sanitize the Punisher a little bit after going to the official MCU timeline here. But I'm really, really glad they had the balls to do that, because there are a lot of people out there that are those, Blue Lives Matter dipshits that idolize the Punisher and completely miss the goddamn point of who Punisher is and why he does what he does. And it sucks to see people idolizing him in that way. So I feel like that sends a really strong message and is a really good moment for the character to just see, like, it's a satisfying button on that debate going back and forth. He's like, oh yeah, that's why Daredevil leans a little bit more towards mercy, because these guys don't and I'm not them, and they idolize me for the worst parts of myself.
Right.
So I think that's a nice little button on that discussion as well. It was just a really well done moment, and it was pretty exciting. I also think the lighting in that scene, just the way that they lit Frank's face, is really compelling. They did a really good job, and they almost, like, you get like his cheekbones. It almost looks a little bit like you can see the bit of the skull through the flesh.
A little bit, yeah.
Really sharp lighting job in that scene. So, gaffers that worked on that. If for whatever reason you're listening, I'm watching you guys. You guys did great.
Yay, gaffers!
Yeah,
one for the gaffer.
Yep.
Oh God! All right. Okay, Dragon. What do you have?
Okay, so I had a big fanboy moment in this episode. I often have those, but here was my big fanboy moment for the finale. So of course, obsessed with the Kingpin, but I was like, I had a moment of like, oh my God, it was the sweetest comic pull I never thought in a million years I'd see realized in Daredevil. So Kingpin, Gallo has always kind of been throwing Fisk's past in his face, and we have a big moment in this episode where Kingpin, in front of his anti-vigilante task force, in which he would get away with this in front of, and again, we've established these guys, the anti-vigilante task force, they have no respect for Gallo. Like we saw him like that poor kid with his hand in the fryer last episode. Those pal.
Right.
These guys are remorseless. They're soulless. They deserve everything that Frank did to them earlier on. But so Kingpin, he's just sick of Gallo. Gallo just has one more taunt, just saying, "You never." Basically, sorry, my moment specifically is Kingpin crushing Gallo's head. And the reason for it is that this is a pull from the Jason Aaron Punisher Max series, which I always loved. And when we announced my hope is that whenever we did Bullseye, we'd pull a little bit from the Jason Aaron run, in which we had Bullseye and Punisher square off. And basically the idea there was like, it was like the darkest, most interesting take on Bullseye I'd ever seen before, not that this was darker, but pre, Daredevil season 3. And I love what we did with him there. But that Bullseye was like, he was just a psychopath who really enjoyed what he did. And he was crafty and sadistic, and it was like this thing where like he was hired by Kingpin to kill the Punisher, and the way in which he built up to it, like he did stuff like he would go to random families and basically like tie him up for like days and like basically pretend to be the happy-go-lucky Frank Castle, then take him to the park, and then like have guys, he's like wearing a bulletproof vest, and he would have like the family gunned down so he can get in Frank Castle's head. He was that psychotic, and it was like, oh my god,
Right.
that kind of stuff. Anyway, so in the Jason Aaron run, before Bullseye was introduced, we saw how Kingpin, basically how Wilson Fisk became Kingpin in that story, and his big moment, I think it was with Don Rigoletto, if not just another member. He was basically just kind of demonstrating or peacocking, as the kids might call it.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was Don Rigoletto, his former boss. And I love that even in the Daredevil series, I was convinced because of this scene, assuming that was Rigoletto, I always assumed that he might have done this thing to the first, to Rigoletto off screen in Daredevil season 1. So basically, he took down Rigoletto's head and he crushed it, pretty much like you see here. And I was like, oh my god, they pulled the Jason Aaron mode with
this
the Kingpin.
shit is like, I feel like this is like visceral violence.
Yeah.
That's almost like, it very much reminds me of the same kind of like pulp visceral violence that Breaking Bad was famous for.
And this is this scene, by the way, I'm convinced is like, this is why they doubled down on the whole. Okay, folks, this is the dark and grittiest version of the Daredevil you're ever going to see.
We need a GVMA rating for this scene alone. I honestly think it's worth it.
That's what I'm saying. So again, we didn't just do it like we showed just to show how monstrous and you know, again, the violent nature of the Kingpin on full display. It's motivated.
It's a display of power, but it's also just like a display of just how sick he's got it, you know?
Yep.
And the fact that he can get away with it in front of all these witnesses and no one's going to bat an eye, and the fact that these guys were like used to be cops, and it's just, well, you know, used to be, well, you know, I'm saying they were cops, and there's like evil cops now, but you know, went from dirty to evil for abiding this. Mm-hmm. I love that Gallo's like a guy that was like an old colleague is the one who brought him here. He almost throws up, and like bits like this, like, and the fact that Sheila set him up for this too. That's the thing too, is that Sheila feels bad for this. Thank goodness she wasn't there for it, but
yeah.
But again, it was just motivated by proving a point, and it's kind of like it's the challenge to the show of like, how are you going to top the car door? Well, I'm not going to say it tops the car door, but. This is definitely.
I don't think it's quite as memorable as the car. I honestly think the one thing with the car door is the quote attached to it. The whole like, "You embarrassed me in front of her."
Yeah, so
that's what kind of like elevates the car door thing. But I think just as far as like pure like visceral violence on a visual level, this has to top the car door.
So, I mean, look, this, again, it signifies the rise to power. It's brutal, it's grotesque, and also, again, it's ultimately very petty. It's revenge on the guy who, in the first place, confronted him with the truth that, we know what you did. No one's going to forget that. You're a bad person. You're the Kingpin. That's, you know, and again, this guy was kind of the turning point for him, which that was when he first started to bring in his Kingpin-esque tactics into the office. You know, the Gallo was the big connecting point, so it's kind of appropriate that, you know, Gallo couldn't live on if he was somewhat in the stratosphere of the Kingpin. He would have to snuff this guy out. So it was a very fitting moment and a very memorable thing for Kingpin to end out the season on beyond, you know, speech. So I thought this was, again, it's a great comics pull. It was a very chilling moment. And again, of all the violent things I try to avoid in slasher things, the fact that they put this into a Marvel show, like, oh my god! Like, I watched that awesome Kane Hodder documentary. He talks about like ripping like a lady's skull off as like the Victor Crowley character or something. It's like I look away during that scene. This is like, oh god, no. It was like, why? Oh, but it was like in the moment, you know, just seeing that and geeking out about at the same time. It was an elicited reaction for sure. I'll tell you that.
All right, well said. Okay, and finally, let's take a ride down the Braille Trail.
Few bumps along the road, Braille Trail.
All right, Dragon, where do you want to start with this?
Well, real quick, we mentioned her, you know, Sheila, again, so her betrayal of Gallo. We see she's siding with Fisk, but there's some guilt there. She might turn on him later on.
I'm definitely interested to see the Sheila and Michael Gandolfini dynamic.
Daniel Blake.
I'm sorry, I keep calling him Michael Gandolfini. Yeah, Daniel Blake, right. I think the reason why I don't want to call him Blake is that I just associate Blake with The Dark Knight Rises, and I do not like that character in Dark Knight Rises.
Okay.
But yeah, I think those two are definitely going to have a lot of tension. Like I think Daniel is probably going to call her on, having a hesitation. I think it's going to be one of those things, again, not to bring modern politics too far into it, but it's kind of like, if you stick your head out at all about being against it, you might be in trouble, and that's kind of what we're seeing. So we'll see what happens there.
So piggybacking off of that, again, you have our Punisher cops and the again thriving after an attempted assassination. So again, real world parallels. That we're keeping that going.
Yep.
Heather. So Heather again, she breaks up with Matt as we kind of expect. She didn't put in the words yet, but it's pretty safe to assume, like him saying Karen when he wakes up, that wasn't
right.
wasn't a warm welcome. But yeah, she's working for Fisk at the end of this. She's the commissioner of mental health. So
now, Dragon, correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially her character in the comics is like basically just like a really, really tough, like either like detective or police officer or judge or something who goes specifically after vigilantes.
I'm not sure.
Do you know anything about that?
I do not.
Okay.
I mean, Tiki, to my knowledge, Heather Glenn is pretty much like I mentioned to you before. The gag with Heather Glenn is that she's usually just like she's kind of the beard of a girlfriend. She's the she's the breakup. Like she at the top of that Daredevil movie, we have her as a cameo, like breaking up with Matt on the phone. She's like the girlfriend that Matt didn't see a future in, but it was just like Matt's dating life, and we basically took a nothing character and we kind of gave her. Mind you, when we did like the last two episodes, I feel we did the most with her, but up to that point, though, again, to that thing, we kind of gave her a little bit of depth.
Right.
And presumably, we're going to go a little bit further with her. So she was just kind of like literally the
whole
thing.
I definitely think she had better chemistry with the Fisks than she did with Matt Murdock himself. Yeah. So I'm excited that she's metaphorically getting into bed with Wilson Fisk.
So the question is, like, should Matt have told her, who he is, and will that happen in season 2? Based on the fact that he did not tell, like, she's probably going to find out in season 2.
I mean, frankly, after the whole Daredevil and Muse, they're both little boys, they're children. I think after that, it's like, any thought that Matt had to tell her kind of went out the window a little bit.
I got to admit that, look, I know this is, I don't want to judge it too harshly, because again, what I was getting at last episode is that I love that we took a character who's like, our main purpose is just to be a relationship that ends poorly for Matt Murdock, but we made it really a good reflection on his character last episode, that he was in the wrong for treating her the way he did. And I really liked how we did that last episode. And
I kept waiting for him to just she kept asking like, well, why do you hate Fisk so much? And he kept saying like, I can't talk about it or whatever it is. Just say you successfully sued him twice for committing, insane amounts of fraud and murder. And these are reasons a lot of people would hate him. And you can just say those things.
Right.
You had a personal stake in that. But he just never said any of those things. And it would have made total sense. In the moment to say those things without, alluding to the secret identity side.
You're right. That is frustrating as that is. I do like that we did get mileage out of it, and just seeing him he basically used her as a Trojan horse to get to the Kingpin last episode, which was kind of a shady thing to do. Mm-hmm. But by the same token, though, it does make you wonder. Sorry, I'm trying to remember what I was going somewhere with that. Sorry, never mind. Anyway, so big. Okay, the avocados. The avocados was called back to very nice. I love that Foggy had like a little plaque made, or Matt had a little plaque made for him, which is really cute. Like avocados at law.
I will say that if we had to kill Foggy in episode 1, and yes, I agree, the plaque was adorable. If we did have to kill Foggy in episode 1, which I still question, I do think they did a good job of having Foggy basically be around in spirit throughout the whole season. Like, every time we bring up Foggy's name, it is very, very, you can kind of feel the reverence the characters do have for him,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I remember. I'm just saying, Heather in the hospital, though, she could have been like, okay, clearly he's, he's very upset about it. It's like seeing her roll her eyes, like, oh, he's talking about Fisk again. Like, that was that was unflattering on her character.
Right.
That's what I was getting at. Okay. Okay, here's the big nod. Okay, now they didn't explicitly say it, but from what I understand, there's a very strong suggestion of Shadowland. The Shadowland was this event in the comics where essentially, I guess boiled down in the comics, Daredevil was their get out of jail free card with this was Daredevil was possessed by something, but essentially Daredevil became an agent of the Hand, and he was ruling over essentially the Freeport, kind of like non-sovereign kind of part of New York, and it took essentially our Netflix characters and kind of our street level Marvel characters to overthrow him and kind of snap him out of it. That's essentially what happened in Shadow. Also, he killed Bullseye in Shadowland. It's a lot of convoluted ways in which we bring Bullseye back through the comics logic, but the point being, Bullseye was killed by a possessed, like a Matt Murdock who went too far. Now, I like that it seems like we're combining Shadowland and Devil's Reign going forward. So Shadowland being like, a lot of people way back in season 1 thought that Midland Circle was going to be Shadowland. Because the Hand was involved in the comics, the Hand was like the big tie-in for what Red Hook was essentially. So I think it's a really interesting combination. I mean, I hope Matt doesn't go too far. We don't do the whole possession thing, which I don't think they will. But I'm just saying, I think the whole, like Matt going.
I mean, they didn't even want to show the magical gauntlet for the White Tiger stuff.
Amulet,
yeah,
amulet. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I feel bad for Hector as well.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Angela, we saw her, and so she's probably going to be suiting up next season.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Daredevil assembling the army again. Here's the thing that bothered me. Accepting that we couldn't get the Netflix, accepting that we couldn't get the rest of the Defenders. I still like to think this is my deluded hope. Okay. Okay, I'm convinced that if you noticed on the right of screen, the cops are a little out of focus. My hope is that maybe
I noticed that too. Yeah,
Mahoney is there, but we couldn't bring it. We couldn't.
Okay. I like where you're going with that. Yeah,
I like to think that if we picked up, maybe Mahoney's there. Even better. Okay, even better. Imagine this. Okay, this is more farcical, but imagine this. Imagine season 2, episode 1 opens on. Jessica Jones shows up late. I need a drink. She shows up late, and you have Luke. There's basically Luke and Jessica entering as like the down to earth equivalent of the portal scene. It's like Cheers. Like everyone comes in, and
right.
And that's how we bring everyone who just showed up late, but they're all there. But anyway, so we're assembling our team. So far, we got Josie, Karen, Cherry, Detective Kim, the cops, Frank, and possibly more. Again, the more being the more interesting people who didn't show up. We have captured vigilantes like Tiki, our boy, Tony Dalton, the swordsman. He's been captured.
Mm-hmm.
And the Punisher, who has a score to settle with Kingpin and escapes for his one shot.
Indeed.
Rabbit in a snowstorm. We're doing the toast. We have the color theory yet again. The whites, the reds, the blues with Bullseye. We're representing that well still.
Yeah, that's about all I got.
Yeah.
There's one last one. Unless you guys, I'm sorry, go. Did you have something?
I was just going to say it's probably an unpopular opinion around the internet, but I would love to see more of Matt and Jen personally. I think their chemistry was spectacular.
She really did get shortchanged, and I really do think that was because of the restructuring. I think they had to cut it. I shouldn't take all credit for that. I think Rohit pointed out first, and I agree with him. That it does feel like in the comics, she had a lot of really good stuff in the comics. You have the inkling that that's there, and why else bring her in? And even in we're going to bring in a law partner for him, McDuffie and Murdoch. You have to, she would have to be on par of being a good law partner, like a Foggy Nelson. Mm-hmm. So presumably there is character there, but we may have either cut her scenes or we reduced her role or something. So I would like to think we might strengthen her going forward. I would definitely get the bad taste out of the mouth for shortchanging her, but we'll see. But okay, here's a big one. Okay, one last one I got to work in there. We kind of addressed, finally, after all this time, how the heck Fisk got out of prison. We addressed that Fisk got released because of the FBI corruption. So essentially the lawyers worked with the whole, the FBI allowed this, so,
Essentially it was because of Nadeem!
Nadim! Oh, I'm sorry. Gulliver, I apologize. I think I was talking about McDuffie when you said Jen. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you there.
No, I meant Jen Walters.
Yeah, no,
She-Hulk.
I love that. Obviously, best part of She-Hulk was episode 8, no question. I love that episode. And you're right; they had great
Really
chemistry.
good chemistry. They
I would
evened each
love to
other
s-
out in a lot of good ways.
I would love to see him back. Frankly, I they're playing She-Hulk at a distance. Clearly, She-Hulk had because he has all the extra Daredevil costumes, which we saw and which we've set up. So
Mhm.
clearly, we're not saying that didn't happen, but just I really think season 1 they're trying to maintain like the tone of the original, just trying to get like people back in, just to have an expectation, and then when we bring in all the other hero characters from the the former Netflix show,
Sure.
Yeah.
that's when She-Hulk might re-enter the fray, and hopefully that which would make a lot of sense. We bring her to New York or on like he visit her, now she visits him, classic kind of crossover kind of thing. I'm with you. I do like them together, but we'll again Matt Murdock he attracts women like flies. We even saw like the Latvian girl. It would have been better if she's Latvarian, but we bring the Latvian girl. He can charm any woman like the Dickens. So.
Yeah, but just like the legal back and forth that they
Yeah.
had was so strong, and like I don't know, it seemed like they brought out good elements of each other where they made kind of Matt remember like, oh yeah, there's fun aspects to this. It's not all just being this forever penitent warrior monk, and it also like grounded She-Hulk from being a little too silly in that space. So like I think they were good for each other, and there was some good chemistry there. But I know that there's there's elements of that show that I think turn people off, and that's fine. Like, but it is like the She-Hulk comics, and if you don't like the She-Hulk comics, no, you probably won't like the show.
That's true.
So that's fine.
Yeah, I had quibbles with She-Hulk, mostly in like I think 8 onward. I think we really the last 2 episodes of She-Hulk I think really found its footing. But I don't know. I think I forget if it was the therapy episode or not that really kind of like like not the therapy. But yeah, I think the Blonsky therapy retreat episode. That's anyway. I'm sorry, I'm derailing us with She-Hulk talk there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be be nice to see him interact again for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, so I think that Tiki, I think that about does it.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Let's see. Mutali is asking, how do we like Matt's final speech at the end? I think it was all right.
Yeah, I mean, it was again, I like that both Fisk and Matt ended out the season kind of like speaking of New York and just kind of speaking about New York and the whole like the city without fear. I thought that.
I gotta say, I do think that like Fisk and Vanessa toasting against Rabbit in the snowstorm was between that and Matt's ending. I think the Fisk and Vanessa ending is just a little bit more satisfying, but I think it's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so big thanks to Mitali, executive judge. I think that's about it. Yeah, you guys rocked it in the comments tonight. I apologize if we didn't get around to every single point that you guys were making. And thanks again to Jacob Gulliver for coming on, man. It's been a good time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All righty. And good season, good discussion, good company all around. All right. Well, that's all for now until the next daring installment of Discerning Daredevil. Born Again.
Grande avocados.